It's another episode of Leveling Up. Welcome, guys. I hope that you are excited today. I have a very wonderful guest, and you are not going to believe it. We have the president of Toastmasters this year. She is an amazing person. We have 270 plus thousand people that are a member of this organization. Less than 1% receive their distinguished Toastmasters, and Aletta is absolutely one of those. And then you think about it this way. We've had, I think, 96 presidents over the 100-year span of Toastmasters, and there's only been 7 female presidents, but she is the first African president. So very excited to have her on today. We're going to have a wonderful conversation all about how to have presence over your position. Now, every time that you're a leader, you have an opportunity to either command attention or demand attention. Commanding attention is using your presence in a way that is positive. And she is an expert coach and speaker on this idea of stage presence and presence when it comes to not just putting yourself out there, but what happens when you are being completely true and authentic as yourself. So I'm very excited to have her on today. We're going to introduce President-elect Aletta Rochat and DTM to the show. Welcome. So glad that you're here.
Thank you, Brigham. What a wonderful introduction. I'm thrilled to be with you.
Yes, thrilled to be with you as well. Let's first start off. I know you've been part of Toastmasters for over 17 years. A lot of people have probably heard of this, but will you please give an overview of what it's like to be the president? I mean, very few people can speak from that position. So what's it like to be the president of such a worldwide organization?
To be honest, I have to pinch myself every now and again and say, gosh, this is real. Because I always tell the story that when I first went to my very first meeting, I knew nothing about Toastmasters. I'd never met a member, but there was something in my brain that said to me, I've heard about them. And I joked that I was running away from my kids. I've got 3 wonderful children and a wonderful husband, but I was looking for something just for me. And I'm one of these strange people who's always been confident speaking in public. So that was never a big mountain to climb for me. But I was always, I'm a lifelong learner. And when I went to that first meeting, I could immediately see this is where I can learn. And I just kept on having fun. And I kept on taking the next step. It was being a club officer, and then it was being club president. And then it was, I just kept on working my way up the ranks and still having fun. And all of a sudden, here I am. Yeah. So it wasn't the intention when I joined to become international president, but I count myself as blessed to have this privilege of leading an organization that has so much impact in the world. And it's a privilege to learn about myself, to contribute to the learning of others, and I'm still having fun.
Still having fun. That's part of life. If we can find fun in all the different things we're doing, I think we're doing something right. If we're not finding fun, oh man, we're missing out on some of the best years of our lives. Now, when you have such an array of a background as a coach, as a speaker, I know it's hard to pinpoint one thing, but when was your moment to say, wow, I want to do this professionally? Because a lot of people, they get into this idea of, I see all these other people that are thought leaders. They're great speakers. They have really wonderful ideas. When did you have that moment of, I can do this myself?
I think in some ways, it goes back to my childhood. I had what I describe as a nomadic childhood. My dad was in mining and he was a specialist shaft sinker. So at a very young age, we were moving continents, not just cities. So I've got a very clear memory of being in front of my new school class. And I was always the kid with a funny accent who didn't start at the beginning of the term, and looking at this group of strangers thinking, Aletta, you've done this before, you can do it again. So by the age of 8, I'd already figured out that the way you communicate determines whether or not you have friends at break time. And of course, very importantly, whether or not you get invited to birthday parties at that age. So I think that by then my fascination with communication had already begun. And years later, when I joined Toastmasters, I was VPPR for my club, and somebody phoned and said, inquired, and I said, well, come to our meeting. And then this woman said to me, I'm phoning for my boss. He's too busy to come to your meeting. Can't you help him? And I thought for a moment, and I thought, okay, yes. And with the skills I'd already gained as a Toastmaster, that was my first coaching client. And I just loved doing it. And word spread, and more people heard what I was doing, and I got more and more clients. And I think it's ironic in many ways. I grew up in a family of teachers, and I was determined never to be a school teacher because I wanted to be different. But in fact, a coach is someone who helps people learn and often teaches people skills. And what I found was I was teaching my clients the skills I'd learned when I was a child, moving constantly, how to connect with people. It's not just about what you say, does it resonate with the people you're speaking to? Does it connect? Because if it does, then you're in business. But if you're just talking and no one's listening, well, that's not a very nice place to be.
That's a wonderful summation. If we don't have a connection and we're not able to figure out how our message matters for somebody else, there's not really any amount of information you can give someone that will drive that connection. One of the things that I want to hear your experience in, because you've got almost 2 decades of experience coaching people, is how do you help someone go from kind of a negative presence, someone that is always using their position to say, I demand you to do this, to someone that through their example and through their stage presence, through just being with them, they're like, wow, that was an experience to be with them. How do you help them make that transition?
I think for me, it starts with awareness, and
Mm,
it's being awareness of yourself, how you show up in a room, and awareness of other people and how they react to you. So if you start tuning into that, you'll soon pick up when you are saying something that's resonating with someone, that they're with you. But you can equally easily pick up that you are saying something and the walls are going up and there's no connection. So if you tune into that, that's the starting point. And like with anything in life, as soon as you can be aware of it, you can start changing it. But if you're blissfully unaware, then you don't know what's working and what isn't working. And
mm,
one of the tips I've learned over the years is if someone gives you a compliment and said, Brigham, I love what you did in that presentation, I always ask, what did you like about it? Because
ooh,
if
that's a
someone
good
just
tip.
tells you you're great, you don't know what's working and what isn't. But if you ask them to drill down and give you a specific example, then you can start learning what resonated and what worked and what didn't. So those compliments can be very useful to help you understand more of how other people perceive you.
Beautiful. I think if you are able to get into the specifics of feedback, just like you said, now you can have specific ways that you improve. One of the things I always do when I'm evaluating any of my coaching clients is how do I make sure that this is simple enough that they can take action on it and get a result?
Yeah,
Because if it's really
absolutely.
high level and they can't conceptualize it, I didn't do a good job communicating those ideas.
Yeah,
If I can put
yeah.
it in a framework or something simple enough, they're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do to show up more confidently. They can
Mhm.
do it. So
Yeah.
for you, I know you've got so many speaking engagements, so many different experiences that you've been able to have as a president and all the way through 2 decades of experience as a Toastmaster. What's one of those like core memories as a speaker? They're like, oh, this was so good. I'm so glad I had that experience. What was the audience like? What was the experience like? This is the best of the best experience as a speaker. Go ahead.
Gosh, Brigham, I think for me, it's always when you can feel the connection with the audience. You know, I'm always slightly nervous before I start speaking, and I take a moment before I go up on stage just to kind of ground myself to express gratitude for the opportunity, because this is time nobody's going to get back. I'm not going to get it back. The audience isn't going to get it back. So I'm always very grateful for that opportunity. And I always kind of try and get into the mindset where I trust myself, not to have the perfect words, but to have the right words. And often it comes at an off the cuff thing where something happens or you see something in the audience and you comment on it, and people just love that in the moment connection. So that anytime I get that kind of a response from an audience, that is like the holy grail for me. It's
Yeah.
just the best. Um, the most exciting opportunity I've ever had, it wasn't a Toastmasters audience, but earlier this year, I was working with a group of 300 children who, well, they were anything from about the age of 12 through to university age. And they had been sponsored by a foundation to educate them and to teach them leadership values. And I work with them every year, teaching them communication skills.
Mhm.
And in the moment, I had my agenda planned and everything. And in the moment, I decided to switch out. And I had given them some prompts in the workbook of a controversial topic that they could raise. And then we were going to unpack how to go through it. And in the moment, I just thought, you tell me a controversial topic. Now, these kids, they'd been together for about a week. They knew they didn't know everybody, but they had a lot of fun. And they started putting forward ideas that I would never have dreamt of. And some of them were so controversial that the audience just roared when they heard it because they wanted to say yes or no. And in fact, I'd given them yes, no paddles to hold up. And they just, 300 people just going wild in response to that one in the moment thing. It was just so joyous to me because it wasn't me doing it, it was them doing it. But all I created was a space in which they were able to speak up and get a reaction themselves. So we all left on a high that day.
It's beautiful. That's user-generated content in one of the best forms. To be able
Yeah.
to allow those people you're interviewing or the audience members create a real connection because they didn't just participate, they contributed. I think that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that story.
Yeah.
As a president, I'm curious, do you ever feel like there are things that the organization isn't quite doing the way that you wanted? And what would be the way that you could improve the organization from your opinion? This is strictly opinion. You don't have to be like, this has to be the thing. But what's the one thing you'd be like, I would love to do this so that organization of Toastmasters could even be elevated?
Well, there's only one thing in my mind. If we could grow,
Mm,
our numbers now are where they were 10 years ago. The pandemic hit us quite seriously. And of course, there
mm,
are all sorts of geopolitical things since the pandemic. Economies are tight. So if I could have a magic wand and I could just change one thing, it would be that every club would grow, every district would grow. Because if you've got a club of 8 members, that might be fun. But imagine that same club being at 15 members or 20 members. And the reason it's so important, Brigham, is that number one, you and I know how we've transformed as a
mm,
result of being members of the organization. Opportunities have come our way. It's transformed our families, our careers, our communities. And I want more people to be in that universe where they can have the same privilege, where they can find a club that's convenient for them, that's
mm,
thriving, that they want to join immediately. The minute we grow, our revenue increases. The minute our revenue increases, we can do more for our members. We can accelerate things we're working on and deliver them more quickly. We can create more programs. There's just so much benefit to us growing. And if you think of the history of our organization, Ralph Smedley started, very simply, but he had that vision and he kept on inviting more people into the ecosystem and growing our organization. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that vision and all those people who came before me. And I keep on imagining all the people who are coming after us, that how our efforts to grow a club and to grow our clubs and to give incredible value to our members can unlock something life-changing for the people who haven't even walked in our doors yet. So that to me, it's very simple. Let's invite people in. Let's look after them extraordinarily well when they do become members. Let's get them to renew so that they're with us
mm.
for longer and they can have the benefits for longer. And when we do that, so many things become easier. We increase our revenue, our capacity, our choices, and the value we can deliver.
That's a
So it's
beautiful thing.
it's not rocket science. It's it's we need more people to experience what you and I've experienced.
Wonderful. Now, I have a controversial topic because I do think that Toastmasters is a wonderful environment to grow within and to help
Mhm.
the clubs grow. But I've had many speakers say, Toastmasters, it's for kids. It's for the brand new speakers. It's for people that aren't good speaking yet. And I was like, maybe we've been going to a different organization, but what is your experience with Toastmasters as a whole, and how would you respond to someone, whether it's a speaker coach or somebody else that says, "Hey, Toastmasters is for beginners."
Well, I challenge them on that. Well, there are two things that Toastmasters guarantees you. Number one is an audience. Number
Mhm.
two is applause. So that's hard to come by in the real world. And even if you're a professional speaker, I mean, so often I've used my Pathways project speeches to test out new material, to get feedback from an audience,
Yeah.
which is worth gold. You know, if you're a professional speaker and you can only do that in a paid gig and it doesn't go so well, you know, that's a pretty dire set of circumstances. But if you can continuously hone your skills, and think of all the world champions that we have, so many of them tested out their speech again and again and again with different audiences and got different feedback and improved all the time. So I would challenge them to test out their premise. If they think it's for beginners, go to a club, go and present at a club, get feedback and see if you benefit from it. And my prediction is 99% of the time you will learn from it. You'll learn what people like, you'll learn what they like about what you present and how you present it and how you connect with them. And from there, you can go back and improve what you're already doing. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Just go and try it out.
Beautiful. One of the things I want to respond to that question too is any program that you're part of, the value you get is the energy you put into it. It's not the
Yeah.
time allotted, it's the energy and focus you put into it. So I've been able to extract a ton of value from Toastmasters because when I show up, I'm thinking, how do I give as much value as possible? How do I elevate this room and make every time that I
Yes.
am in that room a better experience for everybody? If you show up with that type of energy, that service mentality, that service leadership, I've never had a bad meeting. And I've been to a couple hundred Toastmasters meetings. I've never had a bad one
Wow.
because when I show up, I'm willing to serve wherever they need it. If they have a role that's not filled, I'm like, I'll be there. I'm happy to help.
Yeah.
If we have that type of mentality in our organization, how can we impact other organizations? Because not all of us are going to be professional speakers, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But a lot of us do have to speak consistently. And if we don't have a confident way that we speak, we will be in so many ways like putting handcuffs on our potential if we can't communicate our ideas.
Mhm.
So how has Toastmasters been able to help you break the handcuffs of your communication and be able to help you get to that next level?
And I think I love the way you said that, Brigham. And to me, it is you think you're good and you think you know what you're doing, but how much better could you be?
Mm.
Some of my clients that have been sent to me, one was a pastor in a church and he spoke all the time and he was passionate about what he did, but the church committee said, I'm sorry, but they're boring. You know, your sermons are boring. So they sent
Ouch.
him to me and yeah, and we worked on some stuff. Now for somebody like that whose job and whose passion and that message is so important that he has to deliver every time the church meets, why not challenge yourself to get input, to get help, to practice, to improve, because the impact you could have is multiplied when you do that. So you've got to be humble. You've got to be willing to admit that, you know, you're not perfect. But if you're willing to do that in a wonderful environment with guaranteed audience, guaranteed applause, and guaranteed feedback, I don't think you can lose.
That's such a good example of the pastor that is boring. How many of us have had experiences in business, in a boardroom, in a school board, where people think that they're great communicators, but they just have a PowerPoint slide they're clicking through. And
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
whole experience could have just been summarized in an email. Oh, I get chills and not for the right way.
Not in a
It's
good way.
it's how we all experience things at times. And when we are humble enough to say, ooh, I'm not quite done growing. I want to keep getting
Yeah.
better. That's the
Yeah.
power of going and surrounding yourself with people that want to grow. Now,
And you grow, you get feedback from a brand new member,
oh
and
yeah.
that can give you something that you've never had before.
Mhm.
So it's not just the experienced people who can give feedback. The brand new member can give you a mirror from the audience and say, I didn't
Sure.
quite get that. And that's valuable.
This is something that I think is beautiful in the way that we do things is feedback is fuel for growth. If we don't have
Mhm.
feedback, it's almost like talking to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really challenging if you're trying to have real communication happen. Because for me, one of
Mhm.
the ways I define communication is you are able to not just have a message go out, but it gets received and then say, this is
Yeah.
what I got. based on what you told me. That is a
Mhm.
full loop. It went out and it came back. But if all you're doing
Yeah.
is projecting out, you don't know if you're actually communicating. Communication might have happened, but there's a good chance it didn't if it goes
Yeah.
out and it doesn't come back. So those
And what
feedback loops, yeah,
opportunities are
go ahead.
missed if that
Yeah.
is the case? Because every time you speak, it's an opportunity to build your reputation, to build a connection, to get something done, to change something. And how much do we miss out on when we aren't intentional about it, or we don't prepare carefully for it, or we don't practice? But with Toastmasters, you get the opportunity to do that over time. So over time, it's almost inevitable that you're going to become a more skilled communicator. And that's the joy of it.
It's beautiful. Now, I have a framework that I've used for the last year and a half. I actually discovered it while I was putting my all of these different presentations together through Toastmasters, through different organizations, even speaking in church at times. I want to share this with you, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. This is the way that I help people in an instant be able to become more confident communicators. I call it story.
Mhm.
You focus on what is significant, whether that's significant progress, the most meaningful elements of a story or a message, and then you translate that for the audience. You say, this is why this matters for you. This is what
Mhm.
will make this meaningful for you. And then after that, you say, this is what we're going to accomplish while we're talking, while we're saying this story. And you focus in on an objective. And then as you are reliving this, you use all different elements of your senses, your sight, your touch. You make it vivid. And then at the very end, you have a yes, meaning a clear, concise call to action, something that they
Mhm.
do based on your experience. And whether they
Mhm.
do it or they choose not to, that's feedback to let you know how effective your communication was. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on this framework story? Significant, translate,
I,
objective, relive, and yes.
I love it. It's very clear, it's simple. When I heard the word significant,
Mm,
the other thing that came to my mind was you're looking for universal touch points with an audience, a
yes.
common experience, that frustration when you're sitting in traffic, or that disappointment when whatever happens. And that becomes significant to both of you, not just the speaker, but to the audience as well. And that immediately creates a bond. And I love the end where you're looking for action, because essentially that story framework is the framework for a persuasive speech. Because
Exactly.
if we can influence change when we are speaking, that to me means something, because else it's just noise.
Mhm.
But if someone can think or feel or do something differently based on what you've just shared with them, that is true communication.
Beautiful. I could not agree more. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this, because this is something I've shared on multiple stages with multiple people. Every single time, if you can condense something into a usable framework like this, we're always
Mhm.
making things as simple as they possibly can be, but not simpler. This is something that I've found is absolutely essential to building confidence, is having
Mm,
those
mm.
significant moments. Because if you're able to focus on the things that matter, not just to you, but those universal experiences, like you said, then it is significant for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about presence, stage presence is one of the things that comes top of mind, but you talk about executive presence. Will you define that for us? Because I know this is something you coach on, this is something you help people
Mhm.
be able to level up their life into. We talk about that and the importance of it.
Executive presence to me is your ability to influence people, to persuade them, to get them to buy into your ideas, not because you're the loudest voice in the room, but because you understand the room. You understand where they're coming from and what they need from you, and you have a way to connect with them. So it's a way of communication. Some people get confused and they think executive presence is about dressing up nicely. That's a very, very small part of it, but it comes from a place of authenticity. It comes
Mm.
from a place of caring. And a true leader doesn't have to have the badge or the title or the corner office, and certainly not the loudest voice. But if their speaking can influence others and influence change and get people to buy into their ideas, that's the presence we're looking for.
Such a good, concise answer. I love that.
Mhm.
When you have someone that struggles with this, what are some of the ways that you coach them through not just focusing on what their position gives them as far as authority, but helping them live into that example type of leader?
Mm, mm. Part of it is being very intentional. That's
Mhm.
taking some time ahead of the conversation, that presentation, that meeting, to understand what is it that you want to achieve. Very simply, what would make it a good outcome for you, and define that. And then think of the people involved. What would they be concerned about? What's their pain point, or what's their concern, or what do they need from you? So if you can proactively address their concerns up front, immediately they're going to trust you more. But I think also a big part of it is the concept of belonging. And one of my mentors shared this with me. I was running for election, for one of the elections to get onto the board, and I'd interviewed many, many past leaders, and this was Matt Kinsey, a past president. And I said to him, I always ask the same question at the end of the interview. If there's one thing you want me to remember as I go through this journey of being a candidate, what would that be? And he said to me, remember that you belong. And that was so powerful to me. And I've since adopted it and taught it to a lot of clients. And the concept is, why wait for someone else to tell you that you belong? Why don't you give yourself permission to belong? And if I did belong at a higher level or at a company or whatever, how would I show up? If I was already one level higher than me, what questions would I ask if I was considering something? What comments would I pass? So you immediately start elevating your own thinking by giving yourself a promotion, by telling you yourself that you belong, but not giving other people, not waiting for them to validate you. Validate yourself and start acting as if you belong, and see where that takes you. So you're challenging yourself to grow
Mhm.
proactively to that higher level. And that's a very
Beautiful.
simple concept, but to me, it really just resonated so much with me, and I've shared it with many others.
That's wonderful. I speak Mandarin, and one of the things that that word belonging does, it's gui
Hmm.
shugan. Gui means to come closer or
Hmm.
to like build that closeness. Belonging isn't just, hey, I'm here. It's we want you to come and be in proximity with us. And then gan is
Very
that
nice.
feeling. It's that feeling of closeness that you are in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a huge concept for all of us, that we can create that belonging by choosing internally to say, I belong there. I belong here. If we're a speaker, a thought leader, a leader in any context, whether it's church or otherwise, we can step into belonging by choosing to belong rather than saying, oh, who's going to tell me that I belong? How many
And as a
people can we
leader,
influence? Yeah, go ahead.
you can take it even further as a leader by saying, how can I make other people feel like they belong? Because
Beautiful.
if everyone feels as if they belong, they're more confident, they're more relaxed, they're probably more productive, more creative.
For
So as a
sure.
leader, if you can create that sense of belonging for your team, you're going to get far better results than if nobody feels as if they belong, or they're not sure if they belong. So we can pass that forward and create that for others.
This is such a wonderful service that you can do as a leader. And you don't have to
Mhm.
have a title to do that either.
No,
Anytime you're in a
no.
room, you can say, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. You belong here. As we connect intentionally with people, we can create significant progress in our relationships. It's all about
Mhm.
relationships. I've found this in business and in life, that if you don't have a true relationship, it doesn't equate to much business. But as soon as you have a deep relationship, people want to come back for more because they know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on relationships and the importance of that in leadership as the president?
Everything is done through people. And in my
Mhm.
experience, the challenges we face mostly are people related. It's easy
Yeah,
to figure out what to do and what to do next, because there's probably a handbook somewhere that can tell you that process. But
sure.
getting your team, and especially volunteers, all of us have busy lives. All of us have competing demands on our lives. So how do you inspire? How do you keep your team focused? And if you can inspire and motivate those around you, and it starts with building the relationships. When I was district governor back in the day, I somebody was helping me just as an unsung hero, and she said to me, Aletta, what do you want to be remembered for?
Mm,
And without thinking, I said, I want to be remembered for my connection with our members. So she said, she challenged me. She said, okay, how are you going to do that? And we came up with a plan that I would call every single club president in the district. And I'd just call them up and I'd say, how's life as a club president treating you? And keep quiet. And they would share something that would help me understand where they're coming from. But it was all about relationship building, thanking them for their service, so that later in the year, if we wanted more membership or more distinguished clubs, they'd already had a conversation with me. And then we could connect on a different level. And that taught me so much, that if you build the relationships, the results take care of themselves. But just pushing for the results without looking and seeing the people who get the work done, you can only get limited success. So for me, it's just a natural, and I want other people who are leading me to do the same. I want to connect with them on an individual level, and then we'll work together to get the work done.
Beautiful. If you build the relationships, the results take care of themselves. Man, quote you on that one. That's so good. Thank you so much. There's your quote of the day. Beautiful. Now, why, in your opinion, is it important to listen to great content like this, wonderful conversation, specifically the Leveling Up podcast? And why do people, when they tune in, like, why do they want to stay until the very end?
Well, I think it's because your approach to asking questions isn't just a surface level. It isn't just where do you come from, how did you get to be president? It's far deeper than that. You ask questions that make people want to understand how you think. And because that is so rich, you get a far wider perspective than if you just had surface level questions. So for me as a guest, I've loved the questions because they're so thoughtful and they've made me think deeper. And sharing that and hearing your experiences in return has just made for a fascinating interview. So don't miss this one.
Thank you so much. Now, specifically in this conversation we had, what was the biggest reason that people need to listen to the episode?
Because when you are in leadership, you've got to understand how you come across and how you connect with others. And if you understand that and you hone those skills, you're going to be a better leader. You're going to have more impact. So listen to this episode to uncover simple, pragmatic ways that have been proven to work that'll make you the best leader you can imagine.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. President Aletta, it was a privilege to be here with you. Sharing this time, it has made me a better leader already. I've got great stories that I can go off of. I love the one that you brought up about the pastor. I'm going to remember that one next time. I'm like, oh, am I being boring? No, I need to find the more enjoyable and charismatic way to connect with people. So thank you so much for being you. How do people find out more about you, and where can we send them so that they can say, oh, I want to hear more from Aletta, and how they can connect with you? Where do they go?
The simplest place is probably LinkedIn, just Aletta Rochat, and connect with me there. And from there, we'll take the conversation any which way it goes. But Brigham, thank you for what you do, for all the value you've added, because this interview wouldn't have been nearly as interesting if it wasn't for your input. So I appreciate what you've done to make this so meaningful to me.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, looking forward to connecting with you again in the near future. And God bless. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And if you haven't gotten it yet, definitely go check out 3 Reasons Stage Fright Costs and Why You Must Fix It. You can DM me on thefinalpercent.com/Brigham Blackham. We'll see you guys next time. God bless.